All right, perfect. So I'm so glad to have you here today, Cassie. And I wanted to bring you here just because you have turned from a nurse practitioner. I mean, sorry, you've turned to a CRNA, and now you are doing your own consulting. So just to start off a little bit, I wanted to learn a little bit more about how you became a CRNA and how you became in the aesthetic industry.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be joining you today. I was a CRNA. I graduated school back in 2012. Loved anesthesia. I actually still love anesthesia. I'm still practicing part time.
Nice.
And for a number of years, I had interest in aesthetics. And it's funny, it spawned from a friend of mine she's beautiful, very natural looking. Never would have thought that she was into Botox. I didn't know much about Botox. And she told me, "Oh, yeah, I do Botox." And I was like, "Wow, you look so natural and your skin's amazing and all this." She goes, "Oh, yeah, well, our friend Val does it too." I was like, "What?" And she started listing off all these people. And I was surprised that it was breaking the mold of what maybe I had misconceptions about what aesthetics was about. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'm really good with a needle. Like I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I thought on it for a while. I finally took a class and I just immediately loved it and really jumped off from there and pretty quickly started making my website because as I started to research about how to get into aesthetics, there is very little information about how to start your own business. And people are very close-lipped in this industry about helping other providers. I found another CRNA in my community who's a friend of a friend, and I tried to get some information from her. She was very hesitant. She didn't want to tell me where her office
Mm,
was located. She didn't want to tell me who her medical director was.
yeah.
The first thing she said to me was, "Don't steal my clients." Um, so it was very closed off, and you couldn't, by Googling, I had a hard time even picking a class. How do you pick the right class? There's so many classes. They're all so expensive. So that really spawned my idea of creating a website to help people figure out if this is the field that they want to enter into, and then helping give the resources to make that happen.
Yes, yes, and I'm glad you said that because I speak to aesthetic injectors all the time, and their number one question is, "Well, how do I get in? No one's helping me. There's no way for me to kind of get my foot through the door." And it's almost inspiring with someone like you because it is so, lip locked and like no one's really speaking for you to put that information out there. Now, Cassie, where are you located by chance? If you could tell the audience.
Sure, I'm out of Richmond, Virginia.
Nice, nice. And in Richmond, how is the aesthetic industry there?
Um, I would say it's probably pretty typical. It's got a strong showing. There's a variation of like the really big kind of chain med spa.
Yeah.
There's the more like boutique standalone med spas. We certainly have plastic surgeons, OBGYN, dermatologists, offices doing it.
Yeah.
So there's a nice array. And then I'm more of like a small boutique independent practice. So we have a good amount of spas, more coming in all the time. The thing is, with saying that, is the number of people who are getting in and wanting Botox and fillers who are new to the industry is booming so much more than the number of providers out there. And I feel like there's this shortage mentality, like there's only so many clients and too many providers, when really I sincerely believe it's the opposite case. There's
Mhm.
such an untapped market and so many more people that want Botox that either
Mhm.
are not educated about it. And when I say Botox, I'm mostly talking obviously about any neurotoxin, but also kind of aesthetics in general and the
Right.
services that we offer. That's typically an entry level treatment. That's how people find us, maybe. I think there's more people who are looking to get into receiving aesthetic treatments than there are providers to educate them and give it to them.
Yeah. No, and I would agree. Like the market is growing um over so much percent each year and really becoming bigger and bigger. It's a $1 billion industry. So I definitely agree that the sex market is growing. More people are wanting these neurotoxins, but there's not seeming to be enough providers in this industry. Awesome, awesome. So, Cassie, can you tell us a little bit? I know you're a CRNA, and I usually work with like nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and I work with some CRNAs. But can you tell, to my understanding, CRNAs have a deeper understanding of kind of the anatomy in the face. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of distinguish?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that CRNAs are really well suited
Yeah,
to doing aesthetics, and there's so many of them entering into
yeah,
it. And that's for a good reason. And it's because we do focus a lot already on the anatomy of the face. We're
yeah,
the airway experts, so that's right there as well. We're also very comfortable with needles. We do epidurals, we do peripheral nerve blocks, we are the IV experts, central lines. So we are very procedural in nature. We're also very independent, usually in our thought processes and in our practice. CRNAs in many parts of the country are the only anesthesia providers there. We work very
nice.
independently. We can work independently. So I think that mindset is already there and lends
Yeah,
itself well. One caveat I would say that is a drawback for CRNAs is legally in most states it is not going to be listed as part of our scope of practice, which it
mm,
is for an FNP.
yeah.
So that can present with a unique implication depending on your state about how you can practice under your license.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I know behind the scenes we talked about that a little bit. Would you mind going into kind of the different states that kind of FNPs can practice, CRNAs can practice, and kind of how you specialize in that?
Yeah. So one thing that I talk a lot about on my website is how to research your own state laws because there is so much variation between the states. It's incredibly frustrating. And you're not oftentimes going to be able to just look online for free and find that information. There are a few ways that you can research your own state laws, and that's what I try and help people with because I don't know all the 50 states and there are different laws. And I really feel like almost each state has some variation. The first place that you're going to want to look when you're trying to figure out how you can practice, whether you're an RN, PA, CRNA, any provider, is you're going to want to go to your association and reach out to them first. And for CRNAs, that's the AANA. So I would reach out to my Virginia chapter. For PAs, AAPA. For NPs, AANP. This is the organization that represents your profession, and you are paying them your dues. You're paying them money. They work for you. They work to help support this profession that you've chosen. That's your first stop. They're going to be the most likely to advocate for what you can do within your scope of practice. Hopefully they'll have the answer. Sometimes they don't. Aesthetics is still growing. A lot of times I've had people tell me that their board said, "Oh yeah, well let us know what you find out." So it's coming more on people's radars. The next place I would stop is if you do know or can find another provider in your area that is willing to mentor you. Um, in assuming that they have done the legal legwork. There are a lot of med spas who are not intentionally doing things not by the book. They think that they are, but they haven't, really hired a lawyer. And common practice is oftentimes not legal. The way that we
Gotcha.
see, oftentimes you'll see a nurse doing the assessment and having really no intervention at all, whether it's just doing telemedicine or something like that from either a mid-level or a physician, advanced practice provider. You're not seeing any intervention from them. That may mean that they're not going by the book to the T legally, and they may
Gotcha.
not even realize that. So I would take whatever this other provider tells you with a grain of salt, knowing that not always are people having the right legal background for how they're practicing. But if you can find a mentor in your area, that is hugely helpful. Don't expect for that person to let you come shadow for free. I would say, I would love to come shadow you. Do you have a daily fee that you charge? Or you could, if there was a certain amount that you think was reasonable, you could offer that up. Providers get people asking them to come shadow and pick their brain all the time. So set yourself apart
Yeah.
and show that you're serious about it and that you respect their knowledge and their time and that you would love to shadow them and learn from them and that that's worth something to you because it's incredibly valuable. The next place you're going to want to go is to get more formal legal help. AmSpa are the gurus, the legal gurus of the aesthetics world. They're a big national law firm, and
Nice.
they have a state by state printout that you can access if you buy their top tier membership to get full access to your state. And it's $800, I think, to join that top tier. But it is worth the money in the sense you could pay a lawyer thousands of dollars in your state who's less familiar with aesthetics, and they're going to come back to you and say it's a great area. AmSpa is truly the authority on it. If you're floundering to find your state regulations about how you can practice, that's really where you're going to find that answer. You could find a local malpractice attorney, but the likelihood you want to find somebody who has that aesthetics sound background because it's very specific. And then the last place I tell people to go is the Board of Nursing or the Board of Medicine. Their job is really to protect the public. Their job is not to advocate for you. Oftentimes it's more of like a disciplinary role that they're in, but you can contact them for, straightforward answers. They are definitely a resource, but there's a reason that I list them last.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. I know that information will be very valuable to a lot of providers that are, one, being new grads, or even two, people that are experienced but needing a little help on direction on what to do next. So I had a quick question about our new grads. I get a lot of questions from them. Kind of, what are the first steps I can do? Some of them want to just come out of school and like, hey, I can just order some product, or some of them want to, go into the industry and work in a med spa. What advice would you get them kind of being a new grad, breaking into the market or doing it on your own?
Yeah. I think depending what your background is, I'm a huge proponent if you are able to, start your own business.
Yeah.
There is a wide open possibility. Oftentimes, if you go work for another med spa, be very aware that there's probably going to be a significant non-compete in place for you. So if they're
Yes.
willing to train you, and these jobs are very competitive. So say you're
Yeah.
able to get the job with no experience. Um, People really want injectors with experience. I've talked to a lot of people who want to break in, they can't find a job, um, but if you do get that job and they're willing to train you, that's a huge effort on their part and cost them a lot of money to train you. So understandably, they are going to have this non-compete. It'll probably say something along the lines of, for 2 years commitment and non-compete for X amount of miles for a certain amount of time. So just if you are taking a job, be very aware of what that non-compete might say. I do have some really helpful articles on my site. One talks about how to prepare for your Botox class. And I think I've got like 6 or 7 steps of how you can go into your class and just be ready to crush it and leave that class. And you've got the foundation of your business in place. You've done the research to find out if you can practice maybe in the way that you want to in your state. So you don't go spend thousands of dollars to find out, oh, well, I need a medical director. Well, I didn't realize that. Or, oh, I can't practice under my license in the way that I thought I could. I just don't want somebody to spend thousands of dollars and then realize like it was kind of all for naught. So injectables.edu.com is my site. And that is really, I think, the number one resource out there for people trying to learn aesthetics and or start their own business. There's nothing else like it that I've found.
Yeah, and I agree, honestly. I was able to check out your website and look through it, and it gives so many helpful tips, especially to new grads. As working with all these new grads that are in the aesthetic industry, there is really not too many sources, as you mentioned, for them to go and know what to do to start off, or even experienced ones to kind of advance. So I definitely would recommend you go check out that site also. One important thing or one interesting thing I found on your website was you talked about how much you should pay a collaborating physician. And I know as an experienced injector that is looking kind of to get out of the med spa type game and kind of run their own because they build up their patient clientele. They're always asking me, where do I find a physician collaborator or how much do I pay one? So what would you say in those kind of I
Yeah,
can
I get
say.
that question a ton. There, one common way to find a medical director would even just to post a job posting on Indeed. I see a lot of
Mhm.
people doing that. There
Yeah,
is a website called National Medical Directors
yeah,
that they can hook you up, and that's specific to aesthetics, to med
gotcha.
spas. Um, Also, too, I think the best way is to just start asking, physicians that you have a working relationship with, start putting it out there and asking them. You've already built some level of trust with them. You might be surprised who would be interested. And when you start putting these things into the world, um, they can sometimes happen. So putting that out there, I was surprised. Not the first person I asked who was very interested in doing it. But he was like me, had young kids, earlier in their career, had a lot on his plate. He didn't feel like he had the time or bandwidth, especially when you start talking about the second part, which is how much do you pay somebody?
Yeah,
So ideally, when you're just starting out, when you're maybe doing this just part time, it's your side gig, you're still working. Um, I like to tell people aim for about $200 a month, 200 or
yeah,
250 bucks a month to start paying your medical director. Their real responsibilities is to make sure that your policies and procedures are set up and on point. In many states, they don't have to know how to inject, do aesthetic injections. I definitely think it's wise to get your medical director trained. It doesn't necessarily have to be, day one when you're opening your business, but I think it's wise. It's obviously more conservative to get them trained, but many states they don't have to be. It could be an OBGYN. My medical director is an anesthesiologist. So I'm really the injectables expert, but he still serves his own role as the medical director, which helping make sure that policies and procedures are in place. And many states have a certain percentage of charts that your medical director needs to be co-signing with you. So he serves that role for me as well, but his time commitment's incredibly minimal, and the liability in aesthetics is pretty low as long as if you're a medical director, as long as the person that you are the medical director for has their ducks in a row and has policies and procedures, is practicing appropriately for their title and scope of practice. So it's a small time commitment and it is a small legal liability. So it doesn't make sense for that person to be receiving, $1,000 a month. Now, as you grow and grow, you've got a full blown med spa. You've got multiple people under you. Then you're looking more at that $1,000 a month. And if they're going to start to do hands-on and be much more active, that can be a different story. Legally, you need to pay a medical director what is a legal market value. So you can't pay your medical director $1 million a year to be the medical director for your spa. That's not market value. So there's some legal implications with how much you pay them as well. And on the flip side, you shouldn't be paying your medical director zero because that's not market value. So it's going to vary by state. Certain states you're supposed to have a core physician, which that means plastics, that means derm, the people we typically think of as having aesthetics as part of their specialty. So in those states, likely the going rate is going to be a little bit more than if you're able to just use an OBGYN or any sort of physician. Some states you can use a dentist. It just varies a lot.
awesome, awesome. And I did see that, like, going being in the aesthetic industry, I've seen like even some dentist offices are doing aesthetics, and they do supervise now too. So I know, again, a lot of new grads or a lot of people that are experienced are gonna really soak in this information, and find this very valuable. So thanks for sharing this. Now, Cassie, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to ask you one important question that I think, you know, going into this year, how everything has been, how do you feel that kind of COVID-19 has impacted the aesthetic industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's been good and bad things. Um, Here's one thing that's popping into my mind. So lip filler. So it's almost been like a wash in that some people
Yeah,
don't want to get lip filler because you're wearing a mask all the time anyways.
yeah,
But some people are like, oh, great. When I'm in my few days where I'm a little bruisey and swollen, I can wear a mask. And so they're more interested in lip filler. Um, People haven't been going out, so it's a little bit less of, of that angle, but we're all doing this. We're all looking at ourselves on Zoom, most of us, every day. And we're like, oh man, so
yes.
that's been a huge thing. I've seen people coming in. Many people haven't been taking their vacations, so I've seen a little bit, of an influx of having a little more free cash than they usually do, with some of the stimulus and all that. So I think there's been good and bad. I think most people are probably going to agree. I think that the industry is coming out on the back end of this more booming than it was.
And I agree. I talk to injectors daily, and a lot of them say people are using care cash to really get filler and Botox. So it's booming right now. But during I would assume the middle of the pandemic, a lot of places were closed and not making money. So it definitely is up and down. Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us a little bit about your consulting and what you do, and a little bit about more about the aesthetic industry and your point of view. Can you tell everybody where to find you and where they can reach out to you if they have more questions or maybe want to use your services?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Injectablesedu.com. That's my website. You can reach out to me through there. You can email me. It's Cassie, Cassie at injectablesedu.com. I'm on Instagram, injectablesedu. I'm on Facebook, injectablesedu. You can find my services tab. Some of the stuff that I do offer, I do Botox, basic entry level Botox courses in Richmond, Virginia. I also have an online course, which is called the Complete Guide for the Advanced Practice Provider to learn Botox, and it's a clinical and business course. So you can buy that course standalone, or you can buy that course and also come do your hands-on training with me in Richmond. Another great service I offer is an injectable startup package, which has all the documents that you need to get started with your medical director. And it also comes with a 30-minute call with me where we talk about your specifics. But it's got a fee agreement, it's got your collaborative agreement. That's pretty much plug and play and is going to be applicable to almost any state that needs a medical director. So save yourself the money of paying the lawyer to reinvent the wheel there. So yeah, lots of good stuff on my site, and I will talk to anybody for a free call. I just really love helping people and connecting and building that network. And I'm really hoping to be one small part of changing the culture and aesthetics to this community and helping each other and lifting each other up, instead of being so isolated and living in fear of somebody stealing our clients, because we gain so much more in having that network and community and resources, far beyond trying to prevent that from happening.
Wow, wow. And I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your information. And I will drop all of her information below so you can go ahead and check that out. But until next time, see you. Bye.
Thanks, Jonathan.